Okay, for this lesson, we're going to go over the classifying of chemical bonds, and we're also going to look at just a little bit of review on balancing. So, got a couple examples for balancing here, and one thing you want to do when you're balancing is list each element. So I've got nitrogen and hydrogen. I'm going to list the same ones on both sides. Always show your work. No matter how easy or how well you think you can do this, you have to show your work. When it comes to tests and quizzes, if there's no work, there is no credit. Otherwise, we're going to assume you cheated to get the answer. So with nitrogen, we're going to put a 2 here because I have 2 at the subscript. And then I've got 2 hydrogens from the subscript over here. Nitrogen, I've got 1 here, and I have 3 here. So working with these now, I can see how many of each one I have. So I've got 2 nitrogens and 1 nitrogen. I need to balance that out. So I need to find some way of multiplying this. So I'm going to multiply this by 2. So I'm going to put a 2 here. And when I do that, that becomes 2 nitrogens, but I'm saying I have 2 of this ammonia compound. So I have 2 nitrogens, but now I have 6 hydrogens. This is the distributive property of math. You're multiplying it through. So now that my nitrogen's balanced, I can come and look at hydrogen, and I see I need to balance that. So I need to turn into 6 somehow. So I'm going to put a 3 here. And when I do that, that becomes a 6. So you have that. And then if you want to, you can put a 1 here. Typically when it comes to chemistry, 1s are always implied. So it works with charges, subscripts, and that type of thing as far as that implied 1. All right, let's look at this next one. So we have potassium chlorate. So I've got potassium, chlorine, and oxygen. I'm going to list the same elements in the same order on the other side. I've got 1 potassium, 1 chlorine, 3 oxygens. On the product side, I've got 1 potassium, 1 chlorine, and 2 oxygens. All right, so looking here, potassiums are even, chlorines are even, the oxygens are a little bit off. So there's not a common number that I can just multiply one side to, so I got to multiply each one to make them even out. So there's a common multiple of 6 here. So I multiply the reactant side by 2. So I've got 2 potassiums, 2 chlorines, 6 oxygens. And then on this side, where this oxygen is at, I'm going to turn this into a 6 here. So I'm going to multiply this one here by 3. So I'll get a 6 there. And then I need to look at my potassium and chlorine. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So I'm going to multiply that by a 2 to balance them out. So I can look at my subscripts. Same on both sides, so now I know my equation is balanced. Okay, one more here. Occasionally you'll see something where it's a little bit of a bigger type of reaction. So I'm going to list aluminum, bromine, potassium, and then I can look at this, and I've got a polyatomic ion. So typically when we're looking at bonds, we're looking at just 2 elements. In this case, I've got 3 elements, and I also have that same compound over here. So that's one of our polyatomic ions, and because it's the same on both sides, I can treat it like a single element. And by doing that, I'll save myself a lot of time. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, it's okay to separate the sulfur and the oxygen and solve for those independently. So with aluminum, I've got 1 aluminum, 3 bromines, 2 potassiums, and then over here, I basically have 1 sulfate because I don't have a subscript on the outside. On the product side, I've got 2 aluminums, 1 bromine, 1 potassium, and 3 sulfates. All right, so now when I'm solving this, I'm going to start with aluminum. So I've got the reactants by 2. So when I do that, I've got 2 aluminums, but now my bromines have become 6. So I want to fix bromine on this side, so I need to multiply that by 6. So bromine 6, but now my potassium is also 6 on the product side. So I go to the reactants, I got to turn that one to 6, so I'm going to multiply that by 3. So that becomes a 6, and then my sulfate becomes 3. And by doing that, this has all balanced out. So I'm finished with the 2, 3, 6 for my coefficients. So I want to add a 1 in there, I can do that. So there's a little bit of review on how to balance chemical reactions. All right, the next thing I'd like to show you is a PowerPoint presentation